Let's say that someone forces you unfairly, takes advantage of you unfairly, and makes you, compels you to do work that you should not have to do. Do you do it with bitter resentment, or do you do it with good grace? Stay tuned to hear the answer in this very short Bible study. Hi, this is Pastor Mark Pierce with Church Requel, and I'm back with Bible study number 125 on this Friday, May the 8th. Well, today we want to continue looking at Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, and we have made it up to Matthew chapter 5, verse 41. So if you take your Bibles and look at this, I'll read it for you. Matthew 5, verse 41. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Pretty simple. If someone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Now again, as is true with many of the teachings that we have in Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, it helps us, it gives us a greater understanding if we can know a little bit more about the background of what is being said here. The word here for force in the ESV, if you have a different translation, you might be reading the word compels. If somebody compels you to do this, is from the verb agaruin, which is from the noun agaruos. Now, agaruos is a Persian, actually it's a Greek name, but for a Persian word meaning courier. It's from the noun form of this verb, comes from courier. Now you might say, well, what in the world does courier have to do with being compelled or forced to do anything? Well, this comes back to the Persian postal system, which was an amazing system for the ancient world. You see, each road that the Persians had was divided into stages. Each one of these stages lasted 1 day. And at each stage, there was food for the courier, as well as water and fodder for the horses. And at each stage, there was fresh horses for the next stage provided to the courier. But now, if in the unlikely event that anything was lacking for the courier, then any private person could be compelled or forced or agarurin into helping, even carrying the mail. Now, we fast forward several hundred years, almost a millennium, into the Roman era. This concept of agaruin came to mean any forced service by the occupying country. Now again, think of where Jesus is at, right? He is teaching in a place called Palestine. And Palestine has been taken over by the Romans. Roman law gave the Roman soldier the right to force or agaruin a civilian to carry his pack for a million, which is the Roman word for mile. Actually a little bit shorter than what our mile is today. Now, this Roman rule provided great relief to the soldier, but it certainly caused great resentment on the part of the Palestinian Hebrew. The oppressed were forced to carry the equipment and the weapons of their oppressors. And certainly there were many people in Palestine in Jesus' day who thought that the Roman government should come to an end and to be forced, compelled to go a mile carrying the pack or the equipment or even the weapons of the Roman soldier was unthinkable. But to do it, you would do it with the greatest amount of bitterness and resentment. Notice, by the way, that this is not the issue of whether or not we do what we are unfairly asked to do or not, because clearly in this case, there is no choice in the matter. The person was forced, compelled to do the work. So the issue then comes down to the attitude with which we do what we are forced to do. See, Jesus here is really aiming at the heart issue of attitude. Don't just do something with the required minimum that the unfair law compels us to do. And Jesus is saying, hey, you respond by doing twice as much. Do it with a smile, with gracious courtesy, with a determination not only to do this unfair, compelled, forceful thing, but to do it with grace and with dignity and to do it well. Several commentators write, first of all, Barclay, not concerned to do as he likes, but to be helpful even when demand for help is discourteous, unreasonable, and tyrannical. John MacArthur writes, when we are robbed of our cherished liberty, we should surrender even more of it rather than to retaliate. Boy, that's a far cry, isn't it, from demanding our rights? This is certainly not what you would call an entitlement philosophy. So, as we've looked over these last few days, let me just do a little bit of heart check, attitude check with you. When you're insulted, do you retaliate or do you turn the other cheek? When judgment goes against you and you lose the judgment, do you give even more than is required? And when you are unfairly treated, when you are compelled, forced to do something that is unfair, do you do it with a gracious attitude and with an attitude of helpfulness? You know, you can clearly see this is not the stuff of politeness or of niceness. This is certainly not meant to be genteel society. This is nothing less than spiritual warfare, using the only true power that we possess as Christ followers. Not the cannon that you see behind me, but the Spirit of God, who will accomplish in us what we could never do ourselves. When we come back on Saturday, we're going to talk about how to not be sanctimonious doormats. Thanks for joining me today, and I look forward to talking to you again on Saturday.